I'm more upset with Greg Biffle. He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life. He wouldn't even fight me like a man after. He needs a freaking whooping. I'm going to give it to him.
It is recovery. It is recovery weekend. Go ahead.
It is. All right, let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast. The podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. That's under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter under the handle at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Also, we have a mailbag. Please submit your questions to the address listed in the show notes, and we'll answer on the show. So, I'm still recovering from Sunday. It's a little harder to tell on cam, as we were talking before, but I got roasted and looked like a lobster in real life after sitting there with the sun beating down on us at our seats over there in turn 1. So we had the sun in our face basically that entire time. So we didn't get any of that reprieve of shade that the folks over in 3 and 4 got towards the last 100 laps or so of the race. And it was an eventful day. It was a fun day. And we generally had a good time. What'd you guys think?
I just love live sporting events. It's got to be the right thing for me. It was a great time. I had my son there. That's a special treat for me. I don't really get to, go to those events with him all the time, so that was really cool. Anytime Jeff is standing in front of a grill and I get to eat food, it's going to be a good day. There was much merriment. I think me and I don't want to name names, but me and about 4 other people killed like a 1.75 liter of some $18 vodka and sodas, and it was delicious, and the race was awesome. Yeah, it was a good time. How about you, Finn? You seem like you had a good time as well.
Oh, man. Brought the wifey and met up with you guys. The trip up was nice and clean. It's always good to get through Fredericksburg without too much pain and trouble. Food was good. Food was great. I got a... You know how they have those hot dogs that got the cheese in the middle? I got one with a toothpick. I was eating through it. I've been to one of the hot dogs, and I'm like, what is this? And I was like, oh my gosh. And that is my biggest fear. One of my biggest food-related fears is, the sandwiches on the little sliders, and they stick toothpicks in there. I always have a fear that I'm going to bite into one, and there'll be a toothpick there, and then it goes through the top and the bottom of your mouth. So went through it to start. No, but other than that, man, the shrimp, as always, A+. But it was fantastic. The wife asked how many I had. I said 4. She said shrimp. I said skewers.
This is why I bought multiple pounds.
I just noticed that nobody was really eating it, and I was like, well, if y'all are done eating and y'all are already moved on to the lemonade vodkas, I'm gonna finish these.
We were,
and then get my own lemonade vodka. But
the lemonade vodka started well before you were.
Yeah, we were a little on recovery. We were at the Braves-Nats game the day before, so we were just got a lot of sun that day. And then, yeah, you're right, Jeff. I mean, just brutal. In fact, Richmond really does. I mean, they say it all the time, but bring back the night race. Everybody loves night racing.
Please.
And especially, I mean, I think, didn't we all pass on the one in this race in the fall date? Because we just know that humidity is just going to be bad. Like, fall. It was hot, but it wasn't. It was brutal because the sun was on our face. But no, I mean, the energy was right. The day was great. It's always good to have no rain, like the Dover situation last year where we went and we're sitting on the bleachers getting rained on. Weather was great. The people were great. The vibes were great. Everything went smoothly. National anthem was great. I always think it's funny. I made a mention to my wife about it. I always think it's funny that they always talk about the troops and honoring the troops and all the veterans stand up and then they'll put off fireworks without telling anybody. There's one thing that's gonna trigger a bunch of vets. It's really loud explosives out of nowhere.
I was gonna say that's kind of one of those things where it's
shit.
Kudos for what you're trying to do, but then at the same time, it's that's something you might want to thought. And folks don't know. I mean, Finn is also former military himself, so he's not speaking on something he's unaware of. So
right,
before
fortunately,
anybody comes for us, let's make sure folks understand that none of Corey and I aren't going to sit here and speak on anything regarding the military experience, but
that's true.
It has every right to.
That being said, however, 99% of days, that is an exact thing that would scare the living daylights out of me. But after being at the tailgate for about 5 hours, the explosives going off didn't even really register, as I was very zoned in on what was taking place down on the infield. Didn't phase me a bit.
There you go.
You guys pick up any new stuff? I got this hat. I got this Bowman hat I'm real happy with. A little ally, little robe. I saw that you guys went and got your son the Bubba hat. That was dope, the Dr. Pepper one.
Yep. He wanted a McDonald's one, but that didn't have any McDonald's.
Oh no, we can find that.
So we went with I'm sure we can. So we went and got the the Dr. Pepper.
They found because you owned a Prius, right? Or one of our buddies.
Yeah, it was our buddy who drove down there had a Prius, so the Toyota folks were coming down handing out gift bags, and they gave him 2, and he knows that I'm a Toyota fan, so he gave me one of the packs. So I got one of these, and I got a big foam finger, a T-shirt that probably wouldn't have even fit me in middle school, and a little coffee tumbler. So that was nice, and thanks to the folks of Toyota and everybody for passing that stuff out. So that was nice. But I had passed on the hauler this time. I think my next time by, I'm going to go and get something new. I saw a couple of nice 11 hats that I was interested in. So I'll get by. I mean, you guys know how it is. You see the hauler once, you kind of know what's there, and then you go see it again, you're going to see the same stuff that's there. It just changes year by year. So
for sure,
right?
But there's nothing in that hauler you can't get online.
Right. This first race of the year for us in person, so all the new gear. I did swing by the Legacy Motor Club stuff. I don't think they've quite got the Jimmy Johnson gear. I wanted to go. I didn't see them, but normally they got the stands outside of the track, and all the folks sell their old T-shirts and vintage stuff. I'm looking to really grab some vintage tees this year. Get me a good like Jeff Gordon or Dale Senior vintage, or some obscure one. Ward Burton or something random.
Mark Martin Viagra hat.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Go get you some vintage gear.
I mean, for the sake of the podcast, you got to get a Greg Biffle, get something like that going on, call back to the intro a little bit.
Right. I do need to update that intro. So let's talk a little bit about the racing. One of the big things I mentioned, that Jeff Gluck pole, and it looks like this might have been the best Richmond race for the TV viewers in a long time. Obviously, we talked about the new package, the 2-inch spoiler, reduced downforce. And everybody, there's a record amount of passes in green flag situations. Consider the fact that there wasn't too many restarts. Richmond is not really known for its cautions. It's really historically isn't like the hardest track to drive. You have to save tires, but it's not something that people are losing it. But hey, we saw Reddick lose it. We saw the 9 get spun. Gregson hit the wall.
15 got spun.
15 got maliciously spun.
I didn't spin him, bro.
By a driver with bad intentions. But that's not really something normally Richmond's a track that unless it's on a restart and somebody gets turned on like the Byron thing or whatever, those things go green for a long time. So I figure because this is a race we'll get down to the nitty gritty, but let's first talk about the passing. Corey, what did you feel about on the passing? Maybe from last year, this year, just noticeable this weekend?
I think it was definitely a noticeable difference from last year. You could tell that the package helps, right? And what we saw, I think, and this was, you and I were kind of discussing this a little bit as we could on text messages throughout the race, but there was guys running weirdly high lines, including my guy Briscoe, and making up time. You know what I mean? Like there were guys, you were able to catch and pass the guys in front of you for the most part, especially in the long run. We saw that the 24 jumped out early. The Hendrick cars looked really, really strong. Then as they were in the longer runs in the middle of the race, all of a sudden, here comes the Toyotas, and you see Denny and Truex jump to the front. I think it was a great race, man. You could have watched the first 300 laps of that race and be like, there's no way Larson's winning this thing.
Yeah, I mean,
no way.
Right. And on that, around the high side. So I was always curious. Richmond has always been a track where as you race it, then the grip goes away in that lane. So the next year they like move up a bit. And there's even a couple historical races at Richmond where they're actually on the high line. They're like literally the entire race, they're on the high line because that's where the grip went because of the thing. But then it got repaved and there was some other stuff. So there hasn't been the case since then. So yet that weekend or Sunday was the first time I've ever seen something even close to that. And I don't know if it's, so they weren't doing it on the long or the short runs. In fact, the only car I saw doing it early in a run was the 47 Stenhouse, who very surprisingly was in the top 5. When he passed, I don't know, he may have passed Bowman or may have passed somebody else to get in the 5th. And I remember going, oh, is he a lap down or something or a new tire? And I was like, oh no, that's the 47's just in 5th place. So I haven't had a chance to go back and watch the actual race on the whole broadcast, but I'm curious to see if he was running it that early. Chase started moving up. Noah Gragson started moving up and doing that. I saw other people test it, and then like Bowman tried it, and then I never saw him do it again. It looks like he was like, oh, yeah. I didn't like that at all. But I don't know if it was a situation of where you're getting speed off of exit, or if, again, the most important thing at Richmond is tire wear, if that is a way later in runs to save tire. So while he isn't necessarily going faster in the turn, he's just using less tire so that later in the run he was quicker. And that's what I saw with Briscoe a little bit and some of the guys running it. But for the most part, all the top cars, especially when they were up front, they were rolling the bottom and they were just keeping it clean. And then you mentioned Denny. I mean, he didn't, like, driving up to, like, appearing makes it seem like he went from 6th to 1st. Denny went from like 12th to 1st in that long flag run. And that's what I like. You know, I like when I see short track passing and racing, somebody should be able to go from 6th or 12th to 1st if they've got the speed. But the issue that we've had in the past is you catch the car, dirty air, can't get by him, single file. By the time you pass the guy, the leader's gone. But it's 4 seconds. But no, Denny was able to not only run everybody down, but then catch and pass the leader.
It wasn't even, and the thing is, like you had mentioned, come from the 12th. You're right, but let's also not forget his first pit road speeding penalty of the day earlier. I have plenty to say about Denny's day, and there's not a lot of good to it. But this will probably be the brightest part about it. He came up, it wasn't just that, like, oh, he came from 12th and ran his way to 1st. You knew every time he passed, all you would have had to do was look down to see me applauding, because I was watching him like a hawk as he was weaving his way through and getting through folks while he was out there on the track. But at the same time, like, remember, it was earlier in the race he got that first pit road speeding penalty, and it was after that he still found a way to get his way up to the front after he had gotten bumped to the back of the pack. So it was, I mean, he had one of the fastest cars on the track all day. Most of the Toyotas, between him, Truex, and Bell, they had the fastest race cars out there, arguably, compared to a couple, say for a couple of Chevys. But my goodness, he was, they were lightning fast.
Yeah, 45 also spent quite a bit of time up front. And even Bubba was having a pretty quietly good day before he had a penalty on pit road. But it was his crew getting a penalty, not him. So we talked a lot about what if Toyota needs to show up. And I think this was a good race for them. Obviously, if one of them would have won it, that would have been a lot cleaner. Of course, here we go, Kyle Larson. But I thought that was pretty good.
I have a question on that. Not to go off on a tangent here.
No,
is it possible that because this is the Toyota owners 400 that they get a little bit of juice? Just a little bit.
It's not that they get a little bit juice, but it's just that they put a little juice in it. There's not they get a little bit of leeway, but historically, when you go to tracks that it's your sponsors, when it's your sponsor's track, maybe your sponsor also sponsors the race, or maybe like Charlotte.
You got attention.
For example, Charlotte Motor Speedway used to be called Lowe's Motor Speedway, right? So every time the 48 went there, I mean, obviously Jimmy was really good at the track, but being a Lowe's sponsor, it was just like, for them, that was one of the most important races. When we go up to Michigan, that is all of the OEMs where they're like, I don't know if that's exactly where they recorded, but like, that's like, Ford's up there, Chevy's up there, right? Like, everybody wants to ball out in front of the OEMs. And so Michigan is a big race for that. So there's a lot of competitive juice in there. So yeah, in a situation where like Toyota's sponsoring the race, no doubt in my mind that the Toyotas are putting a lot of focus. And also, this is the same package that's going to be run at Phoenix. So any race that runs this package is going to be the setup-wise the most important thing to gather information from.
Sure.
Because if you show up to Phoenix with a bad setup, it does not matter how good you were all season. Whether you like that setup or not for the championship, that's the beast. So I mean, that does say something about these Toyotas and Chris Bell, right? And in my mind, if they can just get to the Phoenix race, it looks like the Toyotas have pace. I mean, you're right. And it wasn't like one guy got fast. Every
No, it was all
Toyota,
of them.
every single Toyota. It looks like they you know how like when you have a kickoff and then like the guy goes to catch it, but the lineman would run back and then they link arms and they run to block. It's banned now, right? That was the Toyotas about 80 laps into that green flag run. They're like, all right, we're going. And they were just moving.
Truex wins that race if his pit crew didn't screw up the tire rotation.
So what it was is
so he thinks anyway.
So here's what happened.
Makes sense to me.
No caution occurs. I think Truex takes that one to the bank. He was able to not only run down Byron, but pass him and go. The race would have absolutely gone green if it was, again, gone green the whole way. Because again, these guys already had long run setups, you know. So as it just kept going, their cars had gotten better. But they had taken a set of tires, I think, halfway through stage 1. They had taken an extra set of tires. I think it may have been, so we had the stage caution, everybody took tires, and then I believe there was a caution a short while after that. Who was the first person? Maybe it was the 15. So I think maybe the 15 spun, and I think maybe if 6, 7, 8, that's what it was.
With some encouragement.
It was 7 laps. So it was like 7, 8 laps after Denny Hamlin ferociously and violently assaulted the 15 car. They decided to go put 4 on it and keep that 7 lap set or whatever, 7 to 15 lap set. And then nobody else did. So that was fine. They had the new tires then or whatever. But when it came down to the end, they were out. So they had to put those scuffed tires back on. I think that's just strategy call, right? That sucks. What the controversy was with Martin is that they didn't tell him that he had scuffs on. And remember, I knew. I leaned up to you and I said, 19 doesn't have tires, 99 doesn't have tires, because I had the radio, right? So I knew who did and didn't have tires just from the radio. So how was, like, I understand us being mad when the entire world, there's one person in that entire venue that didn't know that Martin Truex Jr. didn't have tires, new tires on, and it was Martin Truex Jr. That's where I think I said, you just got to give me the most information. Hey, man, we're in a pickle here. We're out of tires. We're going to give you 7 lap scuffs. I know that's frustrating, but that's the you know, if we don't take tires right now, what are we going to do, right? Everybody's about to put on stickers. Good luck. And then so that was the situation with them. And what a crazy, so we've seen it before and we see it all the time, but I've never seen it actually pay off. A situation where during a green flag run of pit stops, some random back marker stays out. It was Eric Jones was the last time we were watching, and then Michael McDowell did it a couple weeks ago, where you just stay out and you just run as long as you can. Because of the short track nature, you put them a lap or 2 laps down or whatever, and they're not really going to be able to catch you in time. You're just hoping that a caution comes out, but it never does. For some reason, a caution never occurs. But in this magical world, right, we get Noah Gragson trying to run the high line, smacks the wall. I believe that was the caution that with like 30 laps left, right? Or was it? Yeah, I think it was that or Reddick or something happened, but we get the spin. And then so Josh Berry, who was a mid-pack, back-of-the-pack guy all day. He got spun by Blaney. That was his, like, highlight of the day for that. He ends up in the top fucking 5, and then he puts on sticker tires, and he's in second. Yeah. You know? And he stole second place on this race. So this is the second race in a row that second place is just completely stolen by somebody rolling around in the mid-20s. Yeah. So, interesting strategy call there, and that's what makes Richmond, right? We remember last year's race, the strategy call by Hamlin, and then he had to run down Truex, who was on a different strategy call, so that was cool. I will say, though, on the passing side, one in our turn, it looked like you needed to be under them to get them. I don't remember seeing anybody really enter the corner and bump and run, but what I did notice, because I was watching Alex Bowman all day, everybody would pass on the outside, coming off of 3 and 4. So it looked like, even though every time I looked over there, I just caught the Lord's rays of sunlight in my face, so I'm squinting, but it looks like 3 and 4. And when I go back and watch, that's what I'm expecting to see. It looks like 3 and 4 was really racy, really able to get a run, exit on the corner. If you were better, you can get up on the outside of that guy or inside, and then you can roll through 1 and 2, hold your lane, and then accelerate, and then win off at 3 and 4. That's where I saw a majority of the passing. So outside of your drivers, who were you guys watching throughout the day? Obviously, Briscoe had a fairly decent day. He finished 12th. Bowman rolled around in the top 5 to 8 all day. Denny was obviously exciting. You guys have any eyes on anybody else throughout the race, or what were you keeping yourself busy with?
Christopher Bell.
Chris Bell was good.
Christopher Bell was running quick. He had just as much a chance to take the win on that one. I thought Marty ran a great race. I mean, and it was. I'm glad you brought up the radio point with the sticker tires, because there was that point when they were coming out towards one of those last pit stops. Because Finn, I know you heard it. I was listening to the radio too, and they specifically acknowledged. They said nobody has fresh tires anymore. Anything else that's going out here will be scuffs from here on out.
Right.
They specifically acknowledge there are no more fresh tires out here. Right. And I think it had a lot to do with, I remember there was a mention specifically of there having been something specifically with the surface on this particular race that, I mean, Richmond's, you've got to watch tires regardless, but at the same time, they treated the track a little bit before this one, I believe, in a way that it played a special role on the tires today. I think it might look a little bit differently once we get there in July, especially since the track temperature is not going to be, at least in the air, 20 degrees different from one side to the other by the time you get to the second half of the race.
Right.
But, and those are some other things to keep in mind. But regardless, yeah, I was watching Bell. I was watching Marty. I thought those guys were running pretty well. I thought Reddick had a pretty good day up until, he decided to, introduce himself to the wall. Whether he had encouragement or not, so I don't know. I had my eye on most of the Toyotas while they were running. You made a point about Bubba. I thought that he was up there and trying to get himself up there throughout most of the race. I think he ran for a pretty good day until he got down there towards the end. But yeah, what about you, Corey?
William Byron.
Yeah.
Just casually again. I think he won stage 1. The race starts. William Byron jumps out to the front. And nobody was close to him. He was a quarter mile ahead of the field.
Right.
It was wild, dude.
Yeah, he was really quick early, man.
This is I don't know what and we've talked about it for a month now with him. I don't know if it's the equipment. I don't know if it's something he's doing. It's a little bit of both or what, but the dude just looks freaking unstoppable right now. I didn't actually see. I haven't seen any footage of of Bell wiping him out, but I did. I heard there was some pretty egregious move of Chris Bell wiping out Byron. I'm gonna definitely go back and watch that.
Right. Well,
here at some point.
Well,
that wasn't what Bell would have said.
Yeah. Well, he backed out of what he said. He initially out of the race he blamed Ross Chastain, but then he went back and said, "Hey," he said on Twitter, he said, "Hey, I watched it back after getting a good view of it. That's on me," and then he apologized to William Byron for ending his day. This was the first time I've ever seen them fan out as much as they do. It looked a little bit Phoenix, a little bit Coda fanning out. Ross Chastain was the one kind of leading that, and it was very aggressive. I will say I felt like he raced clean in those situations. But those
restarts were nuts.
Those restarts were definitely more than what I've normally seen at Richmond. I don't think I've ever seen them fan out nearly as much, because there's right off the turn, it gets really, really close between the apex bottom of the corner and pit road wall. So there isn't a room to cut the corner. If you get stuck down there, you're hitting a wall. So that's definitely not safe. So I was very curious on how that worked. But and then outside of Bowman, who was, I don't think I saw Bowman pass a car in the top 5, and that's pretty unfortunate because he started on the pole. I just feel like he ran up front because everybody's filling out their speed in the car. Nobody got practice, but as soon as William Byron got hooked up, he was like, okay, let's do this. And then everybody passed him. So again, the consistency was Bowman's issue before, and as we're entering the summer part of the schedule, maybe a little bit early, he's doing good, and he hasn't had his crew chief because of suspension. But at the same time, your boys have all your boys have race winning pace. I need that from Bowman, and he just doesn't have that yet. So that was very discouraging. I watched a bit of Logano. Logano was a weird one. Felt like he was around the back. He had a rough day, and then he kind of ended up near the front, which is Logano fashion. Harvick was really quick early, and then I felt like he kind of fell off a bit. I don't know. I can't remember exactly where he finished, but
I saw Harvick try the Briscoe passed him on the outside at one point.
Yeah.
And then Harvick decided he was going to try it too, and it did not work.
Right.
It just wasn't. He was not holding that line for whatever reason.
Right. So, Jeff, you've mentioned it already before. Oh, actually, well, I got one more thing to talk about. What I thought was the best part of the race. Without a doubt, and this is a story. This is everybody that went with us will know what was going on. But it went from awesome to not awesome very quick. So, for everybody at home, we're sitting there we're about 2/3 through this race, and there's a lot of different characters at race. My personal favorite is the drunk guy who just flicks off Kyle Busch as he drives by every time for 400 laps. You know?
That guy. Yeah, I remember I saw that guy.
There's a lot of different guys at the race, some dudes that, cheer their guy. And there was a guy up there standing in front of the stands, and he's like flicking off drivers or cheering his drivers. And then he's turning around and kind of getting the crowd involved, and he like goes to one side because he's kind of in the middle between two sections. He points at one, and he's like, "Let me hear you get loud." And everybody's like, "Woo!" And he does to the other side, "Hey, let me hear y'all get loud." And they're like, "Whoa!" And he's like going back and forth, and he's like, you could just see under his face, he's like, "I am a god. I am these people's god." And then the next thought across his mind is, they want to see me naked. And then do you guys remember this guy?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I remember.
He starts to take his belt and pants off. I've never seen a Karen jump up so fast in my life. He almost got body checked, dude. He almost got body slammed. But this guy, I was doing this.
There was little girls in the front row, and their dad looked like he was about to beat that dude's ass.
Oh my God. How to go from hero to zero so fast.
He was already shirtless. Let's also acknowledge.
Right.
The guy was
already 50% there.
He was shirtless, and you could see in his eyes that 3 sheets to the wind was 4 beers ago. You know what I mean? Like he was beyond, and it was at the point where he's kind of doing that wacky waving arm flailing inflatable tube man thing, where he's kind of like, and then that's when he decided to go and start pumping people up. And then he decided to try and pump them down, and that woman was like, absolutely not.
The thought across your mind, they want to see my dick. That's what they want. That's what the people want.
Yeah, and what people are like, all right, these people are excited. I'm going to give them a moment they're never going to forget. Please don't do that.
I've never seen somebody.
Let's use this as a PSA. Please don't ever be that guy, I promise you. No. Nobody in that public setting ever wants to see your dick.
It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare because like there's nothing we can do. It's so loud, and if nobody stopped it, like I'm just doing it, and it's like one of those old like 30s videos of silent films. Like there's nothing you can do except the opposite because it's just engines, and you're just like.
Well, it's a great way to get yourself put on a list too. Put on a list real quick doing that.
Well, that was also the part. Here's the other part that gets me about that. When you go to another sport, you're at a baseball game, you're at a football game or something like that. There's crowd lulls and it's quiet enough that you can do that and you can kind of hear the things that you're getting out of the crowd while you're making that. That guy didn't hear a damn thing of anybody. Because also, I don't believe he was wearing earplugs either. So,
he's done.
I don't know what exactly he was responding to. Everybody in the crowd literally could have just went.
Well, maybe it was this. Maybe it was this action.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And they could have not made a single sound, and he would have been like, "Yeah, I got him now,"
And he was so slow. He like had a buckle on. He was like, his face is like, I'm like, no, please, no. Oh my God, dude.
I did not expect this to come up in the course of the pod, but that is hilarious. He was definitely enjoying himself. He was feeling himself, and I'm all for anybody feeling yourself.
You thought I wasn't gonna bring that up? I was 100%.
Let's keep the private parts private when you're standing in front of 5,000 people.
Jesus.
That's funny.
Other than that, pretty cool day. Nobody, no strangers being extra. Everybody seemed really, really nice and cool. The headset thing, the intercom thing was cool. The only downside is you really just can't. I think it's a short track thing. You just can't hear. They're too close together. I am interested to try it again when we go to the 600. See with everything being a little bit more spaced out and the cars get more spaced out. Because if it's like 2 to 3 cars going by, I can talk. But like all of them going by, you can't really hear anything at all while we're trying to talk to each other. So, but other than that, man, great race day. I wanna shout something out here, that was pretty cool. So, and it kind of leads. Actually, let's do victory lane and let Corey do his thing, because then this leads well into the next portion. So I want to be clear here. I would have beat you, probably, but I kept the 9 because Josh Berry is known as a short track god in like the lower circuits. And he had a really good Saturday. And I was like, cool, I'll keep the 9 in my lineup from Coda. But it kept it as Jordan Taylor. It didn't keep it as Josh Berry. So I didn't get the 9's credit of second place. And I did start Bowman and Byron. So, but nonetheless, you are the Jimmy Johnson, the 4-time Fantasy Live in a row winner. So go ahead.
I almost feel bad because you guys letting this happen is so absolutely pathetic. If you had told me at the beginning of this whole thing that I was going to win 4 weeks in a row at any point, honest to God, you guys shared, like, one of you won the first week, I think Finn. Jeff won the second week, and I have won every single week since then. If you had told me after that second week that I was about to win the next 4, I'd have been like, there is no way. I don't know enough about this stuff at all. But I'm pretty convinced at this point that I could hang a dartboard on the wall, stand across the room and just throw darts at it, and probably beat you guys at NASCAR Fantasy Live. I don't know is this the worst that you guys have ever done at fantasy sports? Have you ever been worse at fantasy sports than you are at this one?
Do we have permission? Just to be clear, just to be clear, just to be clear, this is your time to talk, and I just want requesting permission to speak.
Permission granted. You guys try to explain to me how it is that the nub has beaten you guys 4 weeks in a row.
With pleasure, my dude. Have you ever played poker with somebody that's never played before?
Yes.
Okay, and you've played fantasy with people who've had it in their first year and somehow pulled out wins?
Yes. You know what I've never done?
So this is what we're seeing right now.
Okay.
So,
I've never lost to that guy 4 games in a row. It doesn't usually happen 4 times in a row. What you got, Finn? Go ahead.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation is a foundation that reached out to the podcast to make the lives of the poor Briscoe fans across the nation that much better. So Jeff and I teamed up to make one Chase Briscoe's fan's life that much better. And on behalf of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, we have found a way to let you back this thing.
Okay. Okay. So hold on. My strategy this week was very simple, and I don't think it was that complicated. I just put in all the Toyota drivers plus Byron. Like, I feel like these strategies are not like revolutionary. I don't know because I can't see what picks you guys are making.
Long haul, though. Long haul. So you can only use Byron 10 times.
That's true.
So that's cool.
But that's true. But like, while he's hot, I'm going to get him. For all we know, that dude could, sure. I'm not wish negativity on anybody, but the dude could break his leg. You know what I mean? Like, he'd be out the rest of the season for all we know. True. So while he's hot, I'm going to ride that hot car all the way to the finish line. But I don't know. It can't continue to be this way. Like, I understand that it's a fluke. I get it.
Well, you've also told on yourself a little bit when you're just like, I don't know. It's not that hard. You're right. It's not.
I pick them based on how cute they are. Are they cute? I'll take him.
Okay. Well, whatever.
My point is you're doing a disservice to your NASCAR knowledge by trying to downplay it so that you could ridicule us for not being. You are not the nub. You're a year into this thing, and you're a hardcore.
You screwed yourself on that one.
You're a hardcore year into this thing. You don't not know what these guys are. You're not showing up going, oh, that guy's name rhymes.
That's right. I am a studier of things, right? Yeah. When I enjoy something, I try to really immerse myself in it. That is true. I have done that. I have done that with NASCAR. My luck cannot continue. And I will call it luck. Your bad luck also cannot continue.
I am a Lions fan and he is a Commanders fan. You relax.
Continue, but let me also point out a couple of things on this too. Okay. For one, you only won by 8 points, so settle down again.
I won by 1 point last week.
I would have definitely got you this week if I didn't pick bum ass Chase Briscoe to try and possibly do something during this race. Yeah. So if one of my starting drivers wasn't the 14 and almost anybody else Who knows? Maybe might have surpassed you this time.
That sounds like some misdirected anger there, sir.
It ain't misdirected anger. I mean, if your driver was better, maybe I would have done better this week.
Little man's taking shots at Briscoe because he's mad at me.
I'm just saying that
Hey,
if he'd have done better this past week.
The minute that I walked into that race and Briscoe was the only car running that high line, I'd have been like, substitution. Nope. Anyway, that's victory lane. I'm out of ideas. I've done Dan Snyder. I've done let's have a tailgate party. I've done I love you guys so much. Let's go to Williams Grove. And I'm sorry, but you lose for a month straight, and it's going to be attack time. So that's what this is.
Speaking of Williams Grove, we got old.
Don't let us streak you, bro.
I got.
Like, don't.
All right.
Speaking of that, I got old Keller, fan of the pod, who said if we go to Williams Grove, he's coming with us. He's got some buddies on the pit crew teams up there, so
Nice.
we'll get some fun times. So shout out to old Greg. Was that all you had for victory lane? Is there anything else you want to get off?
What else do I need, sir?
So
you guys just keep losing. Congratulations.
honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. Talking about Kyle Larson, and this one was kind of one of those divine intervention wins. Quick history lesson here. Around the 2004-2005 timeframe, Rick Hendrick and Hendrick Motorsports were in a great spot, right? You had Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon fighting for championships. Kyle Busch in the 5 car is the young prodigy that they've got coming up from the Busch. He's dominating the Xfinity, now was Busch, now Xfinity series. The tail end of Terry Labonte's career. Point is Hendrick Motorsports is in the prime, and his son Ricky Hendrick was I think he was a driver in the Young Series. He was going to be the next guy coming up. He was good friends with Jimmy and Dale Jr. and all these guys. And then Ricky Hendrick, as well as a few others, unfortunately died in a helicopter crash on the way to Martinsville following a race. It's kind of one of the more tragic times in NASCAR. I don't mean to tear anybody down, but the whole point is Ricky would have turned 43 on Sunday. So, and his number was the 5. And not only was his number the 5, but the 5's paint scheme that they run right now is in memory of Ricky. It's Ricky's old paint scheme from way back in the GMAC days. And that's what Kyle Larson's been running for the whole time. So while, we all joke, I thought it was really cool that on Ricky's birthday, the 5 car was in victory lane. So that was really cool. So that was a good moment for Rick Hendrick. Who I didn't know was a billionaire, by the way. That's crazy. Rick Hendrick's a billionaire.
Duh.
I didn't know that, but I've learned that. But another thing I want to go and something to change up. So as we approach the back half of the podcast and we get going into this week's race, which is the Bristol Dirt Race, there's not a whole lot of history on Bristol Dirt, and I don't want to do too much history lane and talk about normal Bristol because they do have the asphalt race in the fall. I figure we'll do a deep dive on Bristol. We'll look into some of the greatest rivalries, the greatest drivers of Bristol, the history of that track. That'll be a big deep dive for that race. Since there's only been 2 dirt races, I figured let me change something up. So this is going to be what I call the history of, and this is something we're going to start with Hendrick because they ended up winning this race, and because of the thing that got me thinking about that, as well as when we were talking about Brad Keselowski, and how I tell you like it feels like a disservice to Brad Keselowski's as a driver, because you have to see him in this struggling equipment. But Brad Keselowski was dominant, and coming up as a young driver, he was considered like a future star, and he is a champion. So I figured what we do is we go back and we look at each of the Hendrick cars. You've got the 48, the 5, the 24, and the 9. And we'll take a look back at how the history of those charters, every time that car changed numbers to another ride. And I figured this would be a cool thing to look back and maybe look at some of the history of Hendrick Motorsports really quick. And then I promise we'll do this for Joe Gibbs next time. Okay? This isn't just a Hendrick circle jerk.
I have
We've
no problem with this.
over all the other Hendrick drama, and now we're going to go into the Hendrick retrospective. Also,
poor Rick Hendrick just lost $400,000 of his billion. Got all his championship points back.
I'm the communist. What are we talking about? You think I care about billionaire money?
What a crock of shit. What a crock of shit.
Got all of his points back.
What a crock, dude.
So why? What are the different numbers and what does it represent and mean? Let me explain it for you for you guys. So pretty much like Kyle Larson is the easiest one to start with, right? The 5 ride obviously is a Hendrick car number that he's had for years, but they weren't running that until they brought Larson over, and it was actually Jimmy Johnson's crew and that was renumbered. So it's, for all intents and purposes, Jimmy Johnson's old crew, Jimmy Johnson's old car. I mean, I get that we have a new gen car, but that charter is the 5 car. So before anybody talks shit about me jumping on any kind of bandwagon, all right, I didn't go from Jimmy Johnson to Kyle Larson. I stayed with the 48 car, but the 48 that we know is not the 48 of Jimmy Johnson. So that is the 5, and then that is it for that number. Is the 5 goes to the 48 for Larson, and then the 48 was a new charter built by and co-owned by Jeff Gordon back in 2001, 2002, and Jimmy drove that the whole time. So that's one of the easier ones, right? And then it's kind of similar situation for Chase Elliott, right? Chase Elliott is in his dad's number 9, but when Chase Elliott was called up to Cup, he actually took over the 24 car for Jeff Gordon, which had been running since, late 80s, early 90s. So there's that charter. So those are easy enough, right? But I thought it was interesting because I didn't know that William Byron is actually the next step in the historical 5, which is one of the 2 original numbers of Rick Hendrick. The 5 and the 25 actually are those. So let's start with the 5 and go back to back when Hendrick Motorsports was struggling to stay afloat. It was actually Jeff. They had built the 5 car as a charter that they were going to intend to bring on Richard Petty. And then Petty didn't work out, so they reached out to Dale Sr. Dale Sr. didn't work out, and they were going to put Tim Richmond, who originally drove the 25, in that car, and that did not work out. So they didn't have a high profile driver for this ride, and Hendrick Motorsports was not the Hendrick Motorsports we know today, right? They just weren't the superstar teams at the time. So they went and they got the previous Rookie of the Year, Jeff Bodine, and they put him in an unsponsored 5 car. And they ran that year, and things were not looking good. They actually went up to Jeff and the team, and they said, hey, this is going to be the last season. We're gonna be shutting down the program. And then Rick Hendrick was going to exit out of NASCAR. Well, Jeff Bodine won at Martinsville that year, and that changed everything. It was after they won that Rick Hendrick decided to keep the team and keep staying in NASCAR, and now you look at Hendrick now. That went on to Ricky Craven, who brought Tide sponsorship. Don't know if you've seen that, but there's a very historic race at Darlington where the Tide car of Ricky Craven was battling it out with Kurt Busch, and it was one of the closest finishes ever. Might have to send that over to you, Corey. So there's Ricky Craven, there's that, and then they brought over the champion Terry Labonte, who had won championship in the 44. Remember that big ass car that had the camera in it? Yeah. Daytona. So Terry Labonte, his brother Bobby Labonte drove the 18 for the longest. There's a little bit of linkage there. But Terry Labonte was a champion. He came over to the 5, and he ended up winning a championship, I believe, in 97 in that 5 car. From there, that ride ended up, after Terry Labonte was there for years, it went on to Casey Mears, who had the car for a year. I believe Casey is from, I don't know if you remember Jeff, but I believe like Casey kind of came from money. A little bit of, I know he drove like that Target car for Chip Ganassi for a while, but I
remember the Target car.
I feel like Casey Mears' pops had a little bit of cash. He was one of those kind of drivers, brought some money, brought some sponsorship. Not just this Casey Mears, but I think he got 1 win in total for Hendrick Motorsports. In there, we're talking early 2000s. Jimmy Johnson and Jeff are winning half the schedule, and you're in a Hendrick car. He was the Alex Bowman of the at the time. He just kind of lacked the speed. He did get a 600 win. I was there, but I believe that was his only win. Or if it wasn't his only, it was only a couple. And then we see Kyle Busch. Again, we look at Kyle Busch now, and we associate Kyle Busch so much with the 18, but I associate Kyle Busch with the 5, dude. People don't know that, I'm a diehard Jimmy fan, Lowe's, and then every Saturday I'd watch the 5 car in the same exact Lowe's paint scheme. And when I tell you Kyle Busch could probably have lapped the field if it wasn't for, it was like Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick would lap the entire field if they wanted to. They were so good at that time. Won a ton of races. Kyle Busch gets called up and through from Terry Labonte and up, the primary sponsorship for the 5 has been Kellogg's. And they bring Kyle Busch in, and he's driving this Kellogg's car, and it was, that was supposed to be Jimmy, Kyle Busch, Jeff Gordon, and that was the future of Hendrick Motorsports at that time. The 25 was there and present. They had some guys throughout. But I put, actually, you know what? It's not Ricky Craven here. It's Ricky Rudd. I apologize. Going back. So it was Jeff Bodine, then Ricky Rudd that drove the 5, not Ricky Craven. Ricky Craven drove the 25. That's a mistype. But back to Kyle Busch. We know what Kyle is now, and I'm assuming you've picked up a little bit on the reputation of Kyle Busch, right, Corey?
Oh, for sure.
Right. Imagine
super talented. One of the greatest drivers of all time, but got an attitude, which works for me.
Right. Imagine it about 40 times worse, because that's what it was then. I mean, the Busch brothers had a It did not help that Kurt was also not well liked around the garage. Kyle was worse, and it is some of the best sound bites of all time. Early Kyle Busch, and Kellogg simply didn't want to be associated with that kind of driver. And as we all know in NASCAR, sponsor will decide who gets the seat. You know, so unless you bring your own sponsorship as Kyle Busch, the sponsor will decide. And they didn't like Kyle Busch, so they went and they grabbed Mark Martin, who was probably in retirement. They grabbed old Mark Martin, who came in and had really good years. They had a 9-win 2009, almost won the championship. But then as he got older, it was they were actually supposed to be 2. They were supposed to be 1 year of Mark Martin, and Brad Keselowski, who was driving for Junior Motorsports, was supposed to come up and take over the 5. And then they decided to keep him for another year. And that's what you'll see when we get to the 25 over here in the other column. But Brad Keselowski was driving part-time in the 25, just a couple cup races here and there. He was the heir apparent to the 5 car. They signed back with Mark Martin, and Keselowski goes, fine, I'll go to Penske. And then that starts this whole side chain of Keselowski getting the 12 and then getting the 2 and then winning championships in NASCAR. So like Chevy again, we're looking at 3 championships combined between Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski, and Chevy just lost both of them. Because whatever reason, Kyle Busch goes to Joe Gibbs, Keselowski goes to Ford. They go grab the Dodge darling, Casey Kane. We saw him in that commercial that we talked about that one time, the pretty boy, the dirt track legend. Casey Kane was solid, won a lot of races, was really, really fast at 1.5 miles, but he had Ryan Blaney syndrome. And in fact, I saw a Reddit thread that literally said that is Ryan Blaney the new Casey Kane. Tons of speed, tons of talent, can get it done all sorts of track, but can't get it done. Casey was expected to be a championship contender. Don't think he ever made the Final 4. He would end up getting hurt, and now he is full-time dirt racing in the World of Outlaws. And then they changed the 5 into the 24 after they changed the 24 to the 9. And then now we've got William Byron, who I would say is on trajectory to be the best guy in this charter. I mean, seriously, you think about all the accomplishments that these guys. William is younger now than any of those guys were when they started in the 5.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. The times have changed. When Kyle Busch was William Byron's age, he was still in Xfinity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like
William Byron is extremely young, and he's out there dominating, and he's really having a great year. Power rankings will come out next week, and
you beat me to it. I was just about to ask. Like, okay, well then there's one question that needs to be
What's
asked.
funny is we all were laughing at me about Larson, and then he goes and wins the race. So if I have any justification to throw Larson back at the top,
I know.
I'll say this: Larson is going back up, but he's not going back up to 1. But Larson, I did drop. I've been updating on week to week on my own, and I dropped Larson quite a bit because of just 2 bad runs. This puts him right back in that top 5 mix. But more to come.
You're going to give him his points back?
I'm going to give him his points back. No deductions. Just to be clear, do you guys know who actually runs all these teams? Chad Knaus. You didn't think we were going to be cheating? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean,
how about this?
Saying.
I'll do a top 5 Hendrick Motorsports cheating moments.
He literally raised his hand and said, I altered the parts.
Yes.
And then all they did was take away money, which doesn't matter at all.
You must
doesn't matter.
You must not know. You must not know about Chad Knaus, baby.
Well, so here's the thing about that too. Like there were polls, interviews, and everything else that were taken among chiefs and other folks that were like pit crews, chiefs, like just people that were members of just about every other team. When they were asked about that Hendrick decision, almost every single one of them pretty much unanimously said, like, if I was in that position, I'll give you my crew chief and pay the money. Just don't take my points away.
Yes.
Don't take my win or my playoff standings away. Right. So the rules committee was just like, yeah, Like, that's what we'll penalize them for.
They
all
gave
the
him
things
back.
that they don't mind sacrificing.
And I understand that it's a third-party arbitrator. I get all that, but it's like they still gave him back exactly what they wanted to have happen. They don't care.
I don't have a major thought on it. Obviously, I'm the 100 guy in the group. I will say that there is a major issue that NASCAR has when they made these cars to where it's single supplier. And if something doesn't fit on the car or something doesn't work, it's just a single point of failure. Just to be clear, they were not the only team that had their louvers taken. And I would hope, I didn't get to check. I don't know how those appeals went. Obviously, Hendrick is the high profile one. Oh my God. High profile one. But like the 31 of Haley and the Colleague guys also had it.
The Colleague appeal is this week. It should be answered on Wednesday.
So I would say I fully expect that to go the same way. I do hope that their fine is less because we don't want to see small teams get fined as much as Hendrick Motorsports does, simply put. And if there's anything different, then I would absolutely align myself in the side of there shouldn't be preferential treatment here. These are louvers. Now, again, it was caught in practice. And some people are like, hey, did you race with it or did you practice with it? I think on anything that could apply to the race on Sunday. So qualifying and your race to race
NASCAR
car.
Rule.
Your race on race car. That's my issue. I don't have an issue personally in practice. I think, in fact, if I had to say anything, I hope that they what they should do is they should open up the practice rule book completely. So you could just test out whatever the hell you want.
Well, NASCAR's rule is if it comes off, like if it transports to the track and the second it's off the truck, it's supposed to be race ready.
That's fair.
That's their rule, whether it's practice, qualifying, anything else. So that take that however you want. I'm just saying because that's been the primary back and forth, right? A lot of people are going, well, it wasn't it's not like they raced with it or they did this and that. Now, if there's something to that, that's perfectly fine. But the whole, I think the thing that's got a lot of people up in arms about the way that the decision went specifically was the fact that NASCAR made a rule. This NASCAR enforced this rule to the book, to the letter. And then the next arbitrator basically comes in and the way that they ruled it basically told NASCAR they were wrong with what they enforced of their own rule. But,
Well, how about this? Next time, instead of that, we will just show up and spin the 15 car for no reason and then move up through the field because we're the best cars on the field. How about that? We'll do that.
Do some detrimental actions.
We'll get some detrimental actions. The last one is the 25, which would be the chief for the first car of Hendrick Motorsports, which was Tim Richmond's 25 that was actually owned by Rick Hendrick's father. That one got passed up through probably the most drivers in terms of Ken Schrader, Ricky Craven, and then Joe Nemechek. That might be a familiar name. Joe Nemechek was a guy that was really known for his qualifying. We used to call him Front Row Joe. He's also actually, I'd say, for me, he was more famous in the 01 Army car. He was always a big fan for the Coke 600 because it's Memorial Day weekend. All the veterans are there, and they always would cheer for the Army car instead of somebody else. So that was Joe Nemechek. But also, you might recognize that name. And it is Joe Nemechek's son is currently the next big thing,
Hunter.
Right? John Hunter Nemechek, and he's the next big thing for what is he? Is he on the Ford side or Toyota side? He's a Toyota, right? He's in the 20 right now. So he's the next big thing for Toyota. Big future if he can make that jump. I believe he went up, struggled a bit, and then went back down to trucks, if I'm not mistaken. But he's a really young guy, a lot of potential. He's racing for wins every week in the Xfinity Series. So Joe Nemechek's son. Then comes Brian Vickers. Brian Vickers was a talented driver. He was the 25 for the most part of my early NASCAR fanship. Most famously known for wrecking Dale Jr. and Jimmy Johnson at a Talladega race for his first win. Just completely spun his teammate, and then Jimmy collected the 8. It was really one of the biggest bonehead things that he's literally in victory lane like, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to spin him. Just totally took him out. Vickers... I don't know. Vickers underperformed in the 25. He overperformed in everything else that he ran. Red Bull Racing, the same Red Bull from F1 and stuff like that. They had some guys in their in NASCAR. They had a 2-car team. Some guys that were on that Red Bull Racing. Casey Kane was on Red Bull Racing. Brian Vickers was with Red Bull. I can't remember if AJ Allmendinger was. I know AJ Allmendinger was for Michael Waltrip Racing when he was young, but they just didn't have that same NASCAR thing. But he overperformed in Red Bull equipment, but it seemed like in the Hendrick equipment he couldn't get it done. But for what it's worth, the 25 was always seen as the research and development car, whereas the 48, the 24 were the flagship cars, and then the 5 right there with them. But the 25 was kind of seen in R&D. Then it was part-time for a while with Brad Keselowski running it, like we mentioned before. He was supposed to transition full-time to the 5. They stay with Mark Martin for a year, so he pisses off to Ford. It's at this point where this is probably maybe one of the biggest moves in NASCAR, the mid-2000s, right? The DEI fallout, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. So just quick history lesson for you, Corey. Dale Earnhardt did not run for DEI. Dale Earnhardt was an owner and a driver, but he drove for Richard Childress, RCR, in the 3-car. But Dale Earnhardt owned a 3-car team that had his son, the 8, Michael Waltrip, and then Steve Parks in the 1 that eventually was Martin Truex Jr. So that was those 3. So Martin Truex's roots are actually also with Chevy as well, because he won a Xfinity Series championship as a DEI car. So anywho, after Dale died, nobody really knew what to do with all those things. They slowly got worse over the years. They were literally propped up by the fact that Junior was the most popular driver in NASCAR. And then he had a big falling out because Dale Sr.'s wife was not Dale Jr.'s mother, if I'm not mistaken, right? Teresa Earnhardt is not his.
Yeah, and
right.
I specifically remember one of the issues having to do with there being family stuff that was going on there,
Right.
because there were a lot of people that were kind of up in arms about Junior not driving for his dad's company, but then him trying to make it very clear that it did, like, that's not what was going on, that it
Right.
wasn't that, that there was a lot of stuff going on that we probably will never know about.
Right. A lot of drama and a lot of things going on, but there's a big falling out between Dale and Teresa Earnhardt, which was Dale Sr.'s wife, but not his mother. So I don't know, stepmom. I don't know. He's older. I don't know if that really counts as stepmom when you're in your 20s or whatever. But either way, this led Dale Jr. to look elsewhere, and I don't think anybody expected Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, this is Tom Brady going to play with the Jets or the Colts. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or the
Buccaneers.
I wouldn't even say right. No, this is like him going to play with a rival. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was weird. They announced that he was going to drive the 88 because she didn't let him bring the 8 car with him. That was another thing too. And then it actually was Mark Martin, going back to the 5, that took over in the 8 car for a while. But yeah, so the 88 for Dale Jr. I have never seen in my life sponsors throw themselves at a driver. The thing about NASCAR is the other way. Driver throws themselves at the sponsor. Please sponsor me. Please sponsor me.
Right.
So the sponsors, I've never seen a situation where the sponsor literally throws themselves. It was like a bidding war between like all of these, and it ended up being like National Guard, Mountain Dew, AMP, maybe AMP Energy, maybe it was, right? Maybe it wasn't Mountain Dew. Maybe it was AMP Energy. Or maybe they're owned by, I can't remember.
Yeah, I was going to say AMP was a Mountain Dew company. I'm pretty sure that was their energy drink line.
Right. So Dale Jr. comes over, and they actually team him and the 48 crew together in the shop, and then the 24 and the 5 are together through that time frame. So, and it was crazy for me because my best friend that got me into NASCAR was a Junior fan. I'm a Johnson fan, and we always butted heads, and the next thing you know, our guys are teammates and shopmates, essentially. So Dale Jr. comes over. I can't say he overperformed. He performed. He won some races. He did well. He was competing in playoffs, but do you remember? I don't remember Junior really getting any close to the championships. But Dale Jr. did get into some pretty bad wrecks and had a really bad battle with concussions, which led him to have to miss time. And splitting the races of that missed time was 2 guys. 1, Jeff Gordon. 2, a guy who had been driving for Brad Keselowski Racing in a Dr. Pepper car, a fucking back marker that was running 30th every week, Alex Bowman. So Alex Bowman steps in, and he's racing part-time. At this time, he's the sim driver for Hendrick Motorsports. So he's doing their testing. He tests their setups in the sim, and he just gets called up, and Junior talks about how he remembers listening to Bowman talk to Greg Ives about the adjustments and things and how confident he was despite being this young guy, young kid. But because of how much interaction he had with setups and setting those things up already back at the shop, he felt confident to talk. And Dale Jr. put in a word that he thinks Bowman should have replaced him. That's what happened. Bowman would replace him in the 88. And of course, a couple years ago after retirement of Jimmy Johnson, Bowman took over the 48. So I just was thinking about this the other day at work, and I think it would be really cool to go through all the teams and just kind of, wow, okay, so Busch and Keselowski, and all right, those guys were Chevy guys. What happened there, you know? I'm curious to go back and see. Another thing that brought this up is the guy that got spun by Denny, right? J.J. Yaley. And if you don't remember, what happened was the 18 was Bobby Labonte, and that was a championship-level car for Joe Gibbs. In fact, the 18 is the flagship car. Dale Jarrett drove that car. Bobby Labonte drove that car. And then between Bobby Labonte, there was, before Kyle Busch, J.J. Yaley got that ride. And they have said out loud, like, they did not Interstate did not, batteries, they sponsored the car, but they severely reduced how much money was given to that car. And J.J. Yaley,
he won JGR's first championship.
Right. But Interstate Batteries scaled back for J.J. Yaley, and he got like the shit end of the stick. He's driving what everybody thinks is a top 5 car, but him and, Bobby was already underperforming. And so there was a big thread on Reddit this weekend talking about, did J.J. Yaley get a fair shake in the 18? So I'm curious to go back and kind of see, oh, that guy, fuck, you're right, that guy did do that ride, and what happened? And maybe the guys that didn't get a fair shake throughout their time, right? You got guys like Logano that at super young time was in the 20 and then got thrown aside. Can you imagine, Corey, if I told you that Joey Logano was considered an underachiever and was thrown aside?
I love the history stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I find all this to be super interesting. The only request that I have is do one on Tony Stewart.
Oh, well, that's easy. But
I
when we do
JGR,
JGR,
I know it's an easy ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
100%. I want to hear the history of Tony Stewart.
Right. Well, yeah. The history of HSR is so new, so we'll get to look at some of the drivers.
Right, yeah. That's what I mean.
Like that.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
We'll probably combine SHR and Penske because there wasn't too much, but I think JGR would be a fun one to do. That's going to involve a lot of Tony Stewart
I
talk.
definitely want to. Yeah.
So
absolutely in for that as well. Super awesome, man. I always, I can sit and listen to this NASCAR history stuff all day. Right. We basically just make this podcast for me, so that's cool.
I mean, we're growing.
Primary audience, right?
My mom watched. Hey, my mother watched the podcast 4 times this week, so we're good. We're fan ships at an all-time high.
Thank you, Finn's mom,
who
who I've met and is a very nice lady.
Absolutely.
So, Bristol, Jeff, you got anything on this dirt race?
Well, I think that it's been fun these last couple years. I am excited to see him run it again. I'm glad it's once a year. And it's nothing against it. That's not a knock. It's mainly because I really like Bristol as it is. And you want to add it, and throw something in. That's in the tradition of Bristol, right? Bristol has changed a lot over the years. Bristol has been a track that has seen changes and modifications for years. It didn't used to run the same surface that it has. This isn't the first time. It used to run a traditional asphalt surface. It used to run this is its 3rd surface if you include dirt.
Right.
That it runs. It's watched itself go from what I believe was an 18,000 seat track to the 3rd largest sporting venue in the United States. So it's over 150,000 people now, which it also runs different events and stuff like that. Running a dirt race at a place like Bristol is very, very on brand. It's par for the course to do something new, to do something fresh and fun. So I think that's going to be a good time. I enjoy watching it, once a year. I think that's great as long as we keep a traditional Bristol race on the schedule as well. Awesome. That's all that I ask about it. But I think that we're going to see, I think a lot of our traditional dirt racing guys are running pretty well this year, particularly over the last few weeks. So I think that it's going to be a pretty close race coming up on Sunday, and we'll probably see some familiar names come up in prediction time. But I am excited to see what happens, come in. Look at what happened last year, right? When we saw Briscoe basically send it there towards the end and try and take it on the inside and get the win and create a really exciting finish before, Busch just went in and kind of cleaned up the mess. and finished it out. It was an incredibly exciting race. I think that's that's awesome. I think that's going to be a good time.
I love this race, man. This is my favorite race of the year, really. Last year, Bristol Dirt, Jeff just mentioned it with Briscoe wiping out Reddick there at the very end. I had been a NASCAR fan for 5 days when that race happened, right? And it's just like Finn talks me into Briscoe. I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then watching the end of that race with him just running down Reddick was like, man, I could watch this 5 times every day. Just give me that. But so they run the dirt race at Bristol, right? And I know this year there's another kind of weird track on the schedule, which is North Wilkesboro, where they're doing the All-Star race this year, right? But I don't think there's anywhere else on the calendar where they could run a dirt race, right? Like everything else is strictly asphalt. It's something about Bristol. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, but because they convert Bristol into a dirt track for this weekend. Right. It's not dirt all the time. Right. So, but you can't just do that anywhere. Could they do a dirt race at Richmond? Is that even, it's so narrow.
They hardly did it. Well, that's the thing is they hardly considered it possible to do at Bristol.
Right.
They had to update the entire infrastructure around the track to make it happen. When they were this isn't the first time Bristol's been dirt, but it's the first time it's been dirt for NASCAR Cup and NASCAR Series racing. Before they used to do the Outlaw Series there, 20 plus years ago. Do you remember that, Finn? If you've probably seen the Outlaw cars before, Corey. They got the high fenders or the high spoilers out on the back.
Yeah.
They used to run that, and that was a popular series. But they used to run into issues in doing that when just transporting the dirt in and out. The infrastructure around the track couldn't handle them, taking tons and tons and tons of dirt, literal tons, in and out of the track, and they had to update a lot for it to actually make this happen.
It's a huge undertaking that they do, and I think it's cool that it's at night, right? It's a night race as well. It's on Easter Sunday, so it's something a little different, right?
Mm-hmm.
From all of the other normal, it's on a holiday. I don't know. It's just a very, very cool event. And I understand why they only do it once. And I agree with you completely, Jeff, to your point about also doing asphalt Bristol. If they did both races as a dirt race at Bristol, I don't think it would be as special, right? Because it's you just get that one, you get that little taste. NASCAR is very good at the one-off stuff. And you really don't get that in other sports because even like in MLB, right? Even this year, they've added the pitch clock in the MLB and all this kind of stuff. They're changing things a little bit, the way the games run. Even the All-Star game at MLB, it's the same. You get All-Star weekend and all these different sports. But NASCAR can do that and have the race count for something.
Right.
And I think that's a really cool aspect to what they do. And this race will always be special to me in my fanhood because it was that moment when I was I had never felt that type. I went to Richmond the week before last year and I had just never felt what it felt like to be so pulling for a guy and see him just creeping up.
Dude,
just
getting him down, dude. Just every lap. And it's a true wheelman's track, right? This isn't something where it's oh, he's got the better setup, or he's really hooked up, or he's on new arts. No, none of that shit matters. This is who's got the balls to keep this on the throttle and who can keep this car sideways. And we got to see 2 dirt prodigies rip it at the end of last race. And he sensed it and it didn't stick. That's why we like Chase Briscoe, man. I love it. And if you go back, actually, the first dirt race was won by Joey Logano, and that was his first dirt track race ever.
That's wild.
The cars did not perform well. We had to go to single file restarts because they couldn't see. Visibility was an issue. That going into that race last year, I was really concerned because I was like, man, we're doing this again, and it sucked the year before. They couldn't pass. They had to do the single file restarts. But last year,
so fun.
10 out of 10 race for me. We were jumping up, screaming. It was like back when we were at the 600, and we're just screaming. Guess who's chasing who down? It's Briscoe chasing down Larson, and then that big old wreck, and then didn't he wreck himself? Yeah, that's what he wrecked himself, and oh damn, that happened. And then here comes Denny Hamlin, 4 wide on the bottom on the front stretch.
Yeah.
Like those moments, especially early in your
Yeah.
NASCAR career, fanship, you never forget them. And Bristol did just that. So I don't think you
I
can do
love it.
wrong.
And I
Yeah.
think it is people underestimate a new fan coming into the sport will underestimate the difficulty of what these guys do in a given week, right? But Fid, you and I are in this racing league in iRacing, and we did the one and only dirt track
Right.
on the schedule. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and dude, it was a nightmare. Like there was guys all over the place. I couldn't get anything going. I was running around in the back. It's like it is a completely different experience when you put a car at the horsepower level that these cars are in the 600 and 700 range
And the weight. Yeah.
on dirt, and then just say go as fast as you can in a circle.
Yeah.
Like it
Good
is
luck.
wild, and most people could just never even get the damn thing around the track, and these guys are it really shows the skill of the guys who can do it and do it well.
And it's just
And I
visually
think it's a
fun.
super fun
It's
race.
just fun to
Yes,
watch practice.
absolutely.
It's just fun to watch them do this. So
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
super excited. They don't pit. That's another thing. If you're new to the sport and you're watching this week, they don't pit like traditional NASCAR pits. They're gonna stop the race. Everybody's position will freeze, and that'll give them time to come in. Bristol's got 2 pit roads, but trying to enter pit road from dirt to asphalt at speed would be extremely dangerous. And for everybody, for the crew members that are on pit road, you don't want a car sliding down on the pit road. So that'll be one thing. It's gonna, you're just right. Easter Sunday, do it with a weird one, Bristol. But they definitely need to keep the normal version of Bristol. And I think they will. I don't think there's any intentions not to.
For sure.
They could probably do a dirt track. I don't think they could do another like they couldn't throw dirt on Richmond or Dover.
No.
But they could go consider if they got the other thing is we're talking about 40 full-size race cars. So like finding a dirt track that and Bristol can accommodate that, but like something like Eldora, the trucks race at Eldora. So
that's where our iRacing race was.
Right. So doing that in
Eldora.
doing that in the stock cars, but I do in that situation I think it needs to be heats.
Sure.
Like a heat type situation. And maybe they do that for an all-star race. Maybe the all-star race goes to a true dirt track on top of Bristol or something.
Fun.
Right? Or maybe they go, hey, we're going to bring back, for some odd reason we can't do Bristol dirt this year. We're going to do normal Bristol, 2 races of Bristol. Fine, cool. Let's do the all-star race at a dirt track. So
I do think it would be interesting. Like, what if you took like a Martinsville? You took something that's like generally flat, because one of the things that makes Bristol cool as what it is because of the banks, and it's one of the things that makes the dirt track, what it is. But you figure like the drift city that something like Martinsville would become with its paperclip shape, and everybody's trying to like find that grip and get around. You'd have guys like basically whipping their wheels, like taking those rear wheels all the way around the back and turn it into a completely different style of race. But,
Ross Chastain would have lots of grip if they did Martinsville dirt, because he'd just be on the outside wall the whole time.
I think I think that's how I finished. I think that's how I finished 9th in our dirt one. Everybody's just throwing it into the last turn, and I just said, all right, got a little tight. And as you know, once it gets tight, you're up in the wall. And I'm like, all right, we're riding this thing out. So who we got for predictions? Who's stealing Briscoe this week?
I'm taking Briscoe. You guys can F off.
Is that your guy?
100% I'm taking Briscoe this week. Are you kidding me? 100%. I like we saw it last year. There's maybe 4 or 5 guys in the Cup Series who have the dirt talent that Briscoe has. Obviously Larson is one, Reddick is one. I'm sure you guys will be picking from this same type of crop, but Briscoe's my guy. He showed it last year. He's got the bona fides. He can just go out there and send it, and I'm going to be pulling for him. So damn it, I've been paying for him to lose every week. Chase, go win me one. Come on, man. So I'm pulling for you this week.
So he takes Ford's dirt track, darling. Are you going to take Toyota's?
No. I'm going to pick Joey Logano.
Ooh, Logano.
Yes.
What's making you pick Joey Logano?
I think that, you just given how well he's run this year in general, coming off the championship as well, just a lot of those factors. Plus, Logano's run dirt. He knows how to race on a dirt track. He knows what he's doing. He'll be fine. I picked Joey Logano.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. It's going to be Joey Logano.
He's gonna win. It'll be
Fine. If you won't take him, I'll take Christopher Bell.
Yeah, well, it's
I think it's
gotta
about
shake it
time.
up a little bit.
I think it's
thought
about time.
going with Bell. It
Yeah.
was up there, and I was like, man, I picked Bell last week. I picked Bell at least 1 or 2 other times. I was like, who can I go? And then I was like, could it be Larson? Like,
So
no,
I'm always a little concerned on Larson because Larson's so good at dirt track racing, but it's not like the same. And I'm always just concerned at this idea that like he's gonna try it, like he's just gonna be way too over aggressive in those things. And I think he's wrecked out in both of the dirt track races that he was in. So I'm gonna go with Bell, but again, so many talented dirt track drivers in NASCAR. It's cool to see them kind of get their rise to fame. We just got done seeing COTA, where we got to see all the road ringers. You got to see like guys like Austin Cindric, who have a background in road course racing through Europe, and as well as the ringers. And you see how those guys shine. So now getting to watch a different discipline of NASCAR where some of the most, unique driving talents came from, dirt ovals, be sick. And I think, hey, now we need like a rally race. That's what we really need now, like a dirt rally NASCAR race.
Oh, hell yeah.
We'll get Pastrana back in. He'll get back in behind the car.
Give me NASCAR Rallycross. Let's do that shit.
By the way, Pastrana, I'm pretty sure is still ahead of Briscoe in points.
He's Chase Briscoe's ahead of Ty Dillon in points. I don't know how that's a thing, but there's that.
Yeah, I think it's about that time. I think that's gonna about do it for us this week. It's been fun reminiscing with you guys and talking about this last week. We had a great time out at Richmond, and I'm excited to kind of get out there and see what the guys do out there on dirt. So everybody, please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. Please like, subscribe, share, and tell your friends. You can also find us on Twitter at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Find us, follow us, and talk racing to us whenever you want.
Keep your pants on. Keep your pants on at the races.
It's your week, Chase.
Do not take your
Nobody
pants
wants to
off.
see you here.